Olivia Turner wiped the condensation from the small cafe window, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass. 3 years of working double shifts had finally put her through night school, earning her an accounting degree that promised a better future. Her threadbare coat and scuffed shoes wouldn't be needed much longer. The interview she'd just aced at Wilson & Associates would change everything. Her phone buzzed. Mom again. Olivia sighed, knowing her mother had been struggling since Emily's death 6 months ago. The grief counseling bills were mounting. She answered with forced cheer. "Hey, Mom, just finished my—" "Olivia, there are men at the house. From the Hayes family." The name sent a chill through her. The Hayes family, Emily's in-laws, wealthy, cold, and powerful. The family her sister had married into, and the family Olivia had hoped never to see again after the funeral. "What do they want?" Olivia's fingers tightened around her cup. "Richard Hayes himself is here. He's asking for you. Says it's urgent." 20 minutes later, Olivia stood in her mother's modest living room, facing Richard Hayes, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a suit that probably cost more than 6 months of her rent. His expression was granite, eyes calculating as they assessed her from head to toe. "Miss Turner," he said, not bothering with pleasantries, "we have a situation that requires your immediate attention." Behind him stood 2 men in equally expensive suits, one clutching a leather portfolio. The living room, with its faded furniture and family photos, seemed to shrink under their presence. "I have nothing to do with your family anymore," Olivia said firmly. "Emily is gone." Richard's thin lips tightened. "My son Alexander was in an accident 3 days ago. He's in a coma." The news knocked the wind from her lungs. Alexander, Emily's husband, the man whose face she'd only seen in wedding photos and society pages. She'd never actually met him. Emily had been swept into the Hayes world so quickly. "I'm sorry to hear that, but I don't see what this has to do with me." Richard gestured to one of the men who opened the portfolio. "Alexander needs a wife." Olivia laughed involuntarily. "Excuse me?" "The Hayes Group is finalizing a merger with Crawford International next month. Alexander's signature is required, but as he's incapacitated—" Richard's cold eyes fixed on her. "We need someone legally able to sign on his behalf, a spouse." The absurdity of it struck her. "You want me to marry a man in a coma? A man I've never even met? Your family, Emily's sister, it makes sense." "It makes no sense at all," Olivia shot back. "Get out of my house." Richard's expression didn't change. "Your sister left behind considerable debts, Miss Turner. Debts that technically belong to your mother now." Her mother gasped softly from the doorway. Olivia felt her stomach drop. "That's not possible. Emily was married to your son. The Hayes family has millions." Emily maintained separate accounts, gambling debts primarily. "And then there's the matter of your mother's history." Richard produced a folder from his breast pocket. "A DUI from 15 years ago. Sealed records, but nothing stays buried forever." Her employer at the elementary school would be devastated to learn about it. Olivia's hands trembled with rage. "You're blackmailing me. I'm offering you a solution. Marry Alexander. When he recovers, you can divorce. 6 months, at most. We'll pay off Emily's debts and ensure your mother's past remains private, plus a settlement of $2 million when it's over." The sum made Olivia's head spin. Her mother's mortgage paid off. No more double shifts or cramped apartment. "The ceremony will be private. Tomorrow." Richard placed papers on the coffee table. "Our lawyers have prepared everything." Olivia stared at the contract, feeling trapped. "And if I refuse?" Richard smiled thinly. "Then you'll watch your mother lose everything." Hours later, after Richard had left, Olivia found herself in Emily's old bedroom, preserved like a shrine by her grieving mother. She ran her fingers over her sister's possessions, trying to understand how she'd ended up here. On impulse, she pulled out the boxes under Emily's bed, remnants of her sister's life before the Hayes family claimed her. In the bottom of one box, tucked beneath old yearbooks, Olivia found an envelope filled with handwritten letters. Her hands shook as she unfolded the first one, dated just 2 weeks before Emily's fatal car accident. "I'm scared, Sarah. I found something in the company accounts. Something bad. If anything happens to me, tell Olivia to stay away from them all, especially Richard. I don't know who I can trust anymore." Olivia's blood ran cold. She'd always questioned the circumstances of her sister's accident. Now, with a marriage contract to Alexander Hayes awaiting her signature, she realized she might be walking into the same danger that had claimed Emily's life. 1 month had passed since Olivia signed her name beside Alexander's unconscious form, becoming Mrs. Hayes in a sterile hospital room ceremony that lasted all of 10 minutes. Richard had wasted no time installing her in the east wing of the Hayes mansion, far from where Alexander lay in a medically induced coma with round-the-clock nursing care. Olivia stood at the window of her opulent prison, watching gardeners trim the immaculate hedges below. The enormous bedroom with its designer furnishings felt hollow, much like her new life. She'd quit her job, moved out of her apartment, and told her mother only the barest details of her arrangement with the Hayes family. "Mrs. Hayes," a maid knocked softly. "Mr. Richard requests your presence in the study." Olivia smoothed down her new dress, another item from the wardrobe that had mysteriously appeared in her closet after the wedding. Despite herself, she'd grown accustomed to the silk against her skin. Richard's study was a testament to old money, leather-bound books, hunting trophies, and paintings of stern-faced Hayes ancestors. He barely looked up when she entered. "Alexander is awake," he announced, without preamble, his eyes fixed on financial documents. Olivia froze. "Since when?" "Early this morning. Doctors say he's disoriented but stable." Richard finally met her gaze. "You'll be meeting him this afternoon." "Meeting my husband for the first time," Olivia said, unable to keep the bitterness from her voice. "How romantic." Richard's expression hardened. "Remember our arrangement, Olivia. Alexander needs stability during his recovery. You are to act like a devoted wife. And what exactly does Alexander know about our arrangement?" "Nothing," Richard replied coldly, "and it will remain that way. He believes you and he married shortly after Emily's death, a mutual comfort during grief." "That's insane. He'll never believe." "He has brain trauma and memory gaps. The doctors expect confusion." Richard stood, towering over her. "And if you try to tell him otherwise, remember what's at stake for your mother." Hours later, Olivia stood outside Alexander's suite, heart pounding. She'd seen photos of him in business magazines and social pages, always stern, impeccably dressed, the heir to the Hayes fortune. Nothing had prepared her for meeting him in person. Taking a deep breath, she entered. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating a man sitting up in bed. Alexander Hayes looked thinner than in his photos, his jaw covered in stubble, but his piercing blue eyes were alert and immediately locked onto her. Even weakened, he radiated authority. "So," he said, his voice rough from disuse, "you're my wife." Olivia swallowed hard. "Yes, I'm Olivia, Emily's sister." His gaze was penetrating, searching. "They tell me we married 3 months ago. Strangely, I don't remember the wedding. The doctors said memory loss might—" "Spare me." Alexander cut her off, attempting to sit up straighter and wincing. "What I find interesting is that I have no recollection of dating you, no memories of proposing, nothing." Olivia's hands trembled slightly. "The accident was 2 weeks ago. Our supposed wedding was 3 months ago." His eyes narrowed. "What's your angle, Olivia? Money, the Hayes name. What did you want badly enough to marry your dead sister's husband?" The cruelty of his accusation felt like a slap. Here she was, forced into this charade by his father, and he thought she was the manipulator. "You don't know anything about me," she said quietly. "I know opportunism when I see it." Alexander's jaw tightened. Emily's barely cold in her grave. Anger flashed through Olivia. "Don't you dare use Emily against me. You didn't know her like I did." Something flickered in Alexander's eyes. Confusion, perhaps. He pressed a hand to his temple. "The doctors say I have gaps, that things might come back slowly." Olivia softened slightly, seeing his vulnerability. "Yes, that's what they told me too." A knock interrupted them as a nurse entered with medication. Olivia seized the opportunity to escape, nearly colliding with Richard in the hallway. "How did it go?" he demanded. "Terribly. He doesn't believe we're married." Richard's eyes hardened. "Make him believe it. You have access to Emily's things. Use them. Learn everything you can about his routine, his preferences. Become the wife he doesn't remember." "This is cruel," Olivia whispered, "to him and to me." "This is business," Richard replied. "And speaking of business," he lowered his voice as a company lawyer approached. "The Crawford merger paperwork needs attention. We need to discuss some—" Complications that arose before Emily's accident. Olivia froze, straining to hear as they walked away, catching only fragments. Emily found the discrepancies and shouldn't have been looking through those accounts. Her blood ran cold. The letters she'd found hinted that Emily had discovered something in the company finances, something worth killing for. Now trapped in this marriage, Olivia realized she might have stumbled into the perfect position to uncover what her sister had found, and possibly who had killed her for it. Olivia tiptoed through the mansion's west wing, heart pounding in her chest. 3 a.m., and the Hayes estate had finally fallen silent. 2 weeks of playing Alexander's reluctant wife had given her access to areas previously off limits, including Emily's old office. The room remained untouched since her sister's death. Olivia eased the door open, wincing at the slight creak. Moonlight filtered through heavy curtains, casting long shadows across Emily's antique desk. Being here felt like walking through a ghost's footprints. "What were you hiding, Em?" she whispered, running her fingers over the polished wood. Methodically, she searched drawers and cabinets, finding only standard paperwork and personal items. Nothing that explained Emily's fearful letters or suggested why she might have been killed. A soft noise from the hallway made Olivia freeze. Footsteps. She ducked behind the curtains just as the door opened. Alexander stood in the doorway, silhouetted against the dim hallway light. He leaned heavily on a walking cane, still recovering from his injuries. His gaze swept the room, lingering unnervingly close to her hiding spot. "I know you're in here," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Come out." Olivia stepped from behind the curtain, chin raised defiantly. "Spying on your wife?" Alexander's eyes narrowed. Interesting choice of words from someone sneaking around at 3 in the morning. He flicked on the light, making her blink. "What are you looking for in my dead wife's office?" "She was my sister first," Olivia snapped. A muscle twitched in Alexander's jaw. He moved closer, each step deliberate despite his obvious pain. "You didn't answer my question." Olivia hesitated. Could she trust him? He was a Hayes, after all. But he was also in the dark about their marriage, another pawn in Richard's game. "I'm looking for answers about Emily," she finally admitted. "I don't believe her death was an accident." Something flickered in Alexander's eyes. Doubt, perhaps. "The police investigation was thorough." "The police bought by your father's money, you mean?" Alexander studied her, his expression unreadable. "You really hate this family, don't you? Yet supposedly you chose to marry into it." The irony wasn't lost on Olivia. "Life's complicated." "Indeed." He gestured to a chair. "Sit. If we're going to have this conversation, we might as well be comfortable." Reluctantly, Olivia sat. Alexander lowered himself into Emily's desk chair with a barely concealed grimace. "I've been having flashes," he said after a long pause. "Memories, maybe. Things that don't align with what I've been told." Olivia leaned forward. "What kind of memories?" "Arguments with Emily. Her being afraid." He rubbed his temple. "But that doesn't make sense. We were happy." "Were they?" Olivia thought of the letters. People hide things, even from those they love. Alexander's gaze sharpened. "What do you know that I don't?" Before she could answer, his phone chimed. He pulled it from his pocket, frowning at the screen. "Voicemail recovery," he muttered. "The tech team salvaged data from my damaged phone." He put it on speaker, and Emily's voice suddenly filled the room. "Alex, it's me. I don't know if you'll get this. I'm using a burner phone. I found something in the offshore accounts. Dad will say I'm imagining things, but I'm not. If something happens to me, don't trust anyone, not even—" The message cut off abruptly. Alexander's face had gone pale. "When was this sent?" Olivia whispered. "The day before her accident." His eyes met hers, filled with a new wariness. "You said you don't believe her death was an accident. Why?" Olivia took a deep breath. "I found letters. Emily was scared in the weeks before she died. She was investigating something in the company." "Show me." Back in her room, Olivia retrieved the letters from their hiding place beneath the mattress. Alexander read them in silence, his expression darkening with each page. "Why didn't you tell me about these?" he demanded. "Would you have believed me?" She met his gaze steadily. "I'm just the gold-digging sister who supposedly manipulated you into marriage, remember?" Alexander flinched. "Why are you really here, Olivia? And don't feed me the story my father prepared." The moment of truth had arrived. Olivia weighed her options. Telling him everything might jeopardize her mother's safety, but keeping him in the dark meant losing a potential ally. "Your father forced me into this marriage while you were in a coma," she finally said. "He threatened my mother, claimed Emily left debts. He needed someone who could legally sign documents on your behalf." Alexander's expression hardened. "And you agreed to this?" "I didn't have a choice." She lifted her chin. "But finding these letters changed everything. Now I'm staying to discover what happened to Emily." "You're playing a dangerous game," Alexander warned. "If my father is behind Emily's death, then I'm sleeping under the same roof as a murderer," Olivia finished. "I know." Alexander stood, grimacing slightly. "We need to be careful. If what you're saying is true, we can't trust anyone in this house." He moved toward the door, then paused. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry about how I've treated you." Olivia nodded, surprised by the apology. "What happens now?" "Now?" A determined look crossed Alexander's face. "Now we work together to find out what Emily discovered, before whoever silenced her decides to silence us too." The Hayes annual charity gala buzzed with San Francisco's elite. Champagne flowed freely, diamonds glittered under crystal chandeliers, and gossip circulated faster than the canapes. Olivia stood at the edge of the ballroom, feeling like an imposter in her borrowed designer gown. "Stop fidgeting," Alexander murmured, appearing beside her. "You look like you're plotting an escape." "Aren't I?" Olivia whispered back, forcing a smile as another board member's wife assessed her with barely concealed curiosity. "Remember the plan. We need to appear united." Alexander's hand slipped around her waist, the gesture intimate but calculated. "My father is watching." Indeed, Richard Hayes observed them from across the room, deep in conversation with Crawford International's CEO. Olivia had spent the past week preparing for this event, her first public appearance as Alexander's wife. The stakes were high. They needed to maintain their charade while gathering information. "Mrs. Hayes." A woman with an immaculate silver bob approached. "How wonderful to finally meet you. I'm Victoria Winters, head of the foundation." "Lovely to meet you," Olivia replied, channeling Emily's confident social grace. "Such a whirlwind romance after the tragedy with Emily," Victoria said, lowering her voice. "Alexander needed someone special to heal his heart." Alexander's grip tightened on Olivia's waist. "We found comfort in shared grief." Victoria nodded sympathetically. "Emily was always asking questions, wasn't she? Such a curious mind. Speaking of which, Richard tells me you've been helping with the company archives, Olivia." Olivia caught the flash of warning in Alexander's eyes. "Just familiarizing myself with family history." "How thoughtful." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Well, do be careful in those dusty old files. Some things are best left in the past, don't you think, Alexander?" As Victoria drifted away, Alexander whispered, "She knows something." "Everyone here seems to know something," Olivia replied. "Look at your father." Richard was now engaged in an intense discussion with the company's legal counsel, both men wearing grave expressions. "I need to get closer," Alexander said. "Mingle. Make it look natural." Olivia worked the room, enduring introductions and intrusive questions about her whirlwind romance. She kept Richard in her peripheral vision, noting how he escorted the lawyer to a private alcove. "Mrs. Hayes?" A man touched her elbow. "Daniel Frost. I worked with Emily at the foundation." Something in his expression made Olivia's pulse quicken. "Mr. Frost, Emily mentioned you." "Did she?" His eyes darted nervously. "Could we speak privately? Perhaps on the terrace?" Outside, the cool night air provided relief from the stifling ballroom. Daniel checked that they were alone before speaking. "I've been trying to contact you after seeing the announcement of your marriage." He hesitated. "Emily and I were close, closer than Alexander knew." "You were having an affair?" Olivia asked bluntly. Daniel looked shocked. "No, nothing like that. We were friends, confidants. Emily trusted me." He lowered his voice. "She was planning to leave Alexander before she died." The revelation hit Olivia like a physical blow. "Why?" "She discovered financial irregularities, offshore accounts, money laundering through the foundation. When she confronted Richard, he threatened her." Daniel's hands trembled. "The night before her accident, she called me, terrified, said she had proof and was going to the authorities." "What proof?" "I don't know, but whatever it was, it died with her." Daniel glanced over his shoulder. "Be careful. The Hayes family destroys anyone who threatens them. Back inside, Olivia found Alexander by the bar, his expression tense. "We need to talk," she whispered. "I just learned—" "Not here." Alexander nodded toward Richard, who was approaching with Crawford's CEO. "Smile, dear wife." The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced pleasantries. It was past midnight when they finally returned to the mansion, both exhausted from maintaining appearances. "Tell me everything," Alexander said once they were safely behind closed doors. Olivia recounted Daniel's revelation. "Emily was going to leave you. She had proof of financial crimes." Alexander paced the room, agitation evident in every movement. "That matches the voicemail. But I don't understand, why wouldn't she come to me with this?" "Maybe she wasn't sure who to trust," Olivia suggested gently. "Daniel said Richard threatened her when she confronted him." Alexander's face darkened. "My father wouldn't—" "Wouldn't what? Protect the family empire? Isn't that exactly what he's doing with our sham marriage?" The truth of her words hung between them. Alexander sank into a chair, suddenly looking exhausted. "I need to see those financial records myself," he said finally. "If my father is involved in illegal activities—" A soft knock interrupted them. Richard stood in the doorway, his expression unreadable. "Successful evening," he remarked. "Crawford was impressed by the united front. The merger is progressing nicely." His cold gaze settled on Olivia. "Though I noticed you speaking with Daniel Frost." "Just being sociable," Olivia replied evenly. Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. Daniel always was too close to Emily. She had a habit of confiding in the wrong people. Alexander stood. "What does that mean, Father?" "It means your first wife was asking too many questions." Richard's tone was chillingly casual. "Questions that weren't her concern. I'd hate to see history repeat itself." The threat hung in the air as Richard departed, leaving Olivia and Alexander staring at each other in stunned silence. "He all but admitted it," Olivia whispered. "Emily's death wasn't an accident." Alexander's face had gone pale. "We need to find that proof before it's too late for both of us." Alexander hunched over his laptop in the dim light of his study, scrolling through financial records with bloodshot eyes. 3 days had passed since Richard's thinly veiled threat, 3 days of careful investigation, avoiding suspicious eyes, and pretending nothing had changed. "Found anything?" Olivia entered with 2 cups of coffee, setting one beside him. "Too much." Alexander rubbed his temples. "These offshore accounts are buried under layers of shell companies. Emily must have spent months tracing the money trail." Olivia leaned over his shoulder, their proximity now feeling natural after weeks of forced proximity. "What's this one?" "Meridian Holdings?" "A shell company that shouldn't exist." Alexander clicked through documents. "Look at these transfers. Millions moving in and out just before quarterly reports, artificially inflating profits." "Financial fraud," Olivia whispered. "My father's been cooking the books for years." Alexander's voice was hollow. "The Crawford merger is built on falsified financials. Once it goes through, they'll have legal protection and new investors to defraud." The realization of Emily's discovery hung between them. She'd found evidence that could have sent Richard Hayes to prison, motive enough for murder. "We need more concrete evidence," Olivia said, "something that directly links Richard to Emily's death." Alexander closed the laptop, looking suddenly exhausted. "I've arranged a meeting with Jackson Mills tomorrow. Your father's attorney. Can we trust him?" "Definitely not. But he might reveal something unwittingly." Alexander reached for his drink, but instead grabbed a crystal decanter of whiskey. "Want one?" Olivia watched as he poured a generous amount, his hand slightly unsteady. "It's 9 in the morning, Alexander. Perfect time to celebrate learning your father's a criminal." He downed the amber liquid in one swallow. "And that my marriage was a lie, both of them apparently." His bitter tone made Olivia wince. "Emily was trying to do the right thing. Was she?" Alexander poured another drink. "Or was she sleeping with my father's lawyer while plotting behind my back?" Olivia stared at him. "What are you talking about?" Alexander pulled out his phone, showing her a photo, Emily and an attractive man entering a hotel. "Mills sent me this. Said Emily and James Porter were having an affair for months before she died." That can't be true. But even as Olivia said it, she remembered Daniel's words. Emily and Richard's lawyer had been close. "Can't it?" Alexander laughed harshly. "I thought we had a perfect marriage. Turns out I didn't know my wife at all. You're drunk? Not yet. He raised his glass. But I'm working on it. Olivia grabbed the glass from his hand. Stop it. This is exactly what your father wants. You distracted, emotional, unable to think clearly. Why do you care? Alexander's eyes fixed on hers, suddenly intense. This isn't your fight. Emily was my sister, Olivia replied firmly. And I'm tired of the Hayes family treating people like pawns. Alexander stared at her for a long moment before his expression softened. You're nothing like her, you know. Emily was always calculating, always had an agenda. You just say what you think. Is that a compliment or criticism? A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I'm still deciding. The atmosphere shifted, tension of a different kind filling the space between them. Alexander reached out, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his touch lingering. We should focus on the investigation, Olivia said, pulling away slightly. Alexander nodded, the moment broken. You're right. Emily might have been involved with Porter, but that doesn't change what my father did. We need to look at the accident more closely. Olivia paced the room. The police report, witness statements, anything that might show it wasn't an accident. I've requested the file from my security team. Should arrive tomorrow. Alexander hesitated. There's something else. The night Emily died, she left the house after a phone call. Security logs show she entered my private office and accessed the computer. She was collecting evidence, Olivia realized. Possibly. Alexander frowned. There's old security footage from that night. I've never watched it. Couldn't bear to after her death. But now, a knock interrupted them. Richard's assistant stood in the doorway. Mr. Hayes, your father requests your presence in the main office. Something about finalizing the Crawford paperwork. Alexander exchanged a look with Olivia. Tell him I'll be there shortly. When they were alone again, he gripped Olivia's shoulders. While I'm keeping him occupied, access the security server. My credentials are in the top drawer of my desk. Look for footage from the night of March 15th last year. What am I looking for? Anything unusual, anyone following Emily. The footage should show her leaving the estate that night. His eyes were intense. Be careful. If my father suspects what we're doing, I'll be careful, Olivia promised. Hours later, after a tense dinner where Richard dominated the conversation with merger details, Olivia slipped into Alexander's office. Using his credentials, she accessed the security archives, scrolling to March 15th. The footage showed Emily hurrying to her car shortly after midnight, clutching something to her chest. A laptop or folder. She constantly looked over her shoulder, clearly frightened. As her car pulled away, another vehicle followed. One Olivia recognized as belonging to Richard's security team. Her hands trembled as she downloaded the file. This was it, evidence that Emily was being followed the night she died. When she turned to leave, she nearly screamed. A figure stood in the doorway. Alexander. Did you find it? He asked, closing the door behind him. Yes, Olivia pointed to the screen. Your father had her followed, the same night she died. Alexander's expression hardened as he watched the footage. This ends now, he said, his voice cold with determination. Tomorrow we confront my father with everything we've found. Morning light filtered through the heavy curtains as Olivia and Alexander prepared for their confrontation with Richard. They had spent the entire night organizing evidence. Financial records, Emily's letters, and the security footage showing Emily being followed on the night of her death. Once we do this, there's no going back, Alexander warned, sliding printed documents into a folder. Dark circles beneath his eyes betrayed his sleepless night. My father won't surrender without a fight. Olivia nodded, her stomach knotting with anxiety. I know, but Emily deserves justice. This isn't just about Emily anymore. Alexander's gaze met hers. It's about stopping him before he hurts anyone else. The transformation in Alexander over the past weeks had been remarkable. The cold, suspicious man she'd first met had been replaced by someone determined to face the truth no matter how painful. What if he denies everything? Olivia asked. He will. Alexander checked his watch. That's why I've arranged backup. I've sent copies of everything to the district attorney, an old classmate who can't be bought. If anything happens to us, don't say that, Olivia interrupted. We have to be realistic. Alexander touched her arm gently. My father is dangerous. The gesture lingered, his fingers warm against her skin. These moments of unexpected connection had become more frequent, a touch, a look that lasted too long. Neither of them acknowledged it, both too focused on their mission. They found Richard in his office, reviewing documents with James Porter, his personal attorney. Both men looked up with identical expressions of annoyance at the interruption. "This better be important," Richard said coldly. "We're finalizing the Crawford paperwork." Alexander closed the door firmly. "It's important, Father. We know what you did to Emily." A flicker of something, surprise, fear, crossed Richard's face before his expression settled into practiced neutrality. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The financial fraud," Olivia said, placing their evidence folder on the desk. "Emily discovered it. That's why she died." Porter's face paled, but Richard merely raised an eyebrow. "Quite an accusation from my son's gold-digging wife." "Forced wife," Alexander corrected. "Another of your manipulations." "Everything we need is right here," Olivia continued, opening the folder. "Falsified financial statements, offshore accounts, security footage of Emily being followed the night she died." Richard examined the documents, his calm unnerving. "Circumstantial at best, nothing that connects me directly to any wrongdoing." "What about this?" Alexander produced Emily's journal, retrieved that morning from a safety deposit box Daniel had told them about. "Emily documented everything, including your threats when she confronted you." For the first time, Richard showed genuine alarm. "Where did you get that?" "Emily was smarter than you gave her credit for," Olivia said. "She knew she might not survive exposing you, so she left evidence in multiple locations." Porter stood suddenly. "Richard, I should remind you that anything you say—" "Sit down, James," Richard snapped. He studied his son, calculation replacing shock. "What do you want, Alexander? Money? More control of the company?" "I want the truth," Alexander replied, his voice steady. "Did you have Emily killed?" Richard laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "You think I'd murder my own daughter-in-law? How dramatically you view me." "The accident report was falsified," Olivia countered. "Brake lines cut. The investigator paid off." "Accusations without proof," Richard dismissed. "Though I'm impressed by your detective work. You make a better team than I anticipated." Alexander leaned forward. "It's over, Father. The DA has copies of everything. The SEC will be investigating by tomorrow." Something dangerous flashed in Richard's eyes. "You would destroy your own family's legacy? Everything I built?" "You destroyed it yourself," Alexander replied. "Every illegal transaction, every lie, every cover-up." Richard stood slowly, menace emanating from his towering frame. "You understand nothing about building an empire. Sacrifices must be made. Emily was going to ruin everything with her self-righteous crusade." The confession hung in the air. Porter made a strangled noise. "Richard, don't say another word." But Richard's composure had finally cracked. "She wouldn't listen to reason, threatened to go public with her evidence. What choice did I have?" He glared at Olivia. "And now her sister continues her work, like a persistent disease in my family." Alexander's voice was ice. "You just confessed to murder." "I confessed to protecting our interests," Richard corrected. "Something you clearly have no interest in doing." His hand moved toward his desk drawer. Alexander tensed. "Don't." The office door burst open as security guards entered. Not Richard's men, but police officers led by a woman in a suit. "Richard Hayes," she announced. "I'm Detective Reyes. You're under arrest for securities fraud and conspiracy to commit murder." "This is absurd," Richard blustered as an officer handcuffed him. "Do you know who I am?" "A man who just confessed to having his daughter-in-law killed," Detective Reyes replied calmly. "Your office is wired, Mr. Hayes. Has been since this morning when your son requested our assistance." Porter was being handcuffed as well, his legal training apparently forgotten as he stammered denials. As Richard was led away, he fixed Alexander with a look of pure hatred. "You're dead to me." "You killed Emily," Alexander replied simply. "You were dead to me the moment I discovered that truth." When the office cleared, Olivia sagged against the desk, the tension of the confrontation leaving her body in a rush. "It's really over." Alexander nodded, looking both victorious and lost. "The Hayes empire will crumble when this goes public. Everything my family built—" "Not everything," Olivia corrected gently. "You're still here. You can rebuild something better." His eyes met hers. vulnerability and strength mingling in their depths. "We did it," he said softly. "For Emily." "For Emily," Olivia agreed. "And for us." The word hung between them, us, loaded with unspoken meaning neither was ready to fully acknowledge. But as they left the office together, Alexander's hand found hers, fingers intertwining in a silent promise of what might come next. The Hayes mansion looked different in autumn light. Golden leaves scattered across the expansive lawn, and cool morning mist curled around the property's edges. Olivia stood at her bedroom window, watching movers load the last of her belongings into a waiting van. 3 months had passed since Richard's arrest. The trial was still pending, but his bail had been denied, the evidence of financial crimes and conspiracy too damning for even the most expensive lawyers to overcome. The Hayes Group stock had plummeted, the Crawford merger collapsed, and the business press had a field day with the scandal. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. "Come in," she called, already knowing who it was. Alexander entered, dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, a far cry from the formal businessman she'd first met. These days he rarely wore suits, spending his time restructuring what remained of the company rather than maintaining appearances. "All packed?" he asked, glancing around the nearly empty room. Olivia nodded. "Just a few more things." An awkward silence fell between them, the kind that had become increasingly common as her departure date approached. Their forced marriage had served its purpose. With Richard behind bars and the investigation complete, there was no reason for Olivia to remain. "The lawyers delivered the divorce papers this morning," Alexander said finally. "Everything's in order whenever you're ready to sign." "Right." Olivia tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "I should probably do that before I leave." Another silence, heavier than before. "Where will you go?" Alexander asked, moving closer. "My mother's, temporarily. Then maybe back to my old apartment." Olivia shrugged. "Start over." "You could stay," he suggested, his voice carefully neutral. "The East Wing is practically its own house." "You wouldn't have to see me if you didn't want to." Olivia smiled sadly. "We both know that's not a solution." "No," he admitted. "I suppose not." They stood together at the window, watching the movers work. So much had changed since that first day, when Richard had forced her into this marriage. She'd come seeking answers about Emily's death and found justice, but also something unexpected. "I've been thinking about Emily a lot," Alexander said quietly. "Not as the perfect wife I thought I had, but as who she really was. Complicated, ambitious, flawed." "She wasn't a saint," Olivia agreed. "She kept secrets, made mistakes." "Like her affair with Porter." "That wasn't an affair," Olivia corrected gently. "The hotel meetings were to gather evidence. Emily was many things, but she wasn't unfaithful." Alexander's eyes widened slightly. "How do you know?" "Daniel showed me her messages. She was meeting Porter to get access to financial documents Richard had hidden." Olivia hesitated. "She loved you, Alexander, in her own way." He absorbed this information silently, his expression thoughtful. "Thank you for telling me that. It helps." Olivia resumed packing, carefully wrapping a photo frame, the only picture she had of herself and Emily as adults, taken at her college graduation. Alexander watched her, something unresolved in his gaze. "We should discuss the settlement," he said finally. "The lawyers suggested—" "I don't want your money," Olivia interrupted. "That was never what this was about." "I know." Alexander moved closer. "But you deserved compensation for what my family put you through." Olivia shook her head firmly. "The 2 million Richard promised for this charade? No, thank you. I'd rather start fresh, without Hayes' money complicating things. Always so stubborn." Alexander's tone was affectionate rather than critical. "At least let me help with your mother's mortgage." "Alexander, please." His eyes held hers. "Let me do this one thing." Something in his expression made her relent. "Fine, but nothing else." He nodded, seemingly satisfied with this small victory. As she returned to packing, he remained, watching her with uncharacteristic hesitation. "I keep thinking about what happens next," he finally said. "After you leave." Olivia carefully placed the last of her books in a box. "You rebuild the company, make it legitimate, honor the good parts of your family legacy while leaving the corruption behind." "That's the business plan," Alexander acknowledged. "But what about—" He gestured vaguely between them. "Us?" Olivia supplied the word he seemed reluctant to say. "Is there an us?" he asked quietly. Or was it just circumstance throwing us together? The question hung between them, the one they'd both been avoiding for weeks. Their relationship had evolved from mutual suspicion to reluctant partnership to something neither had anticipated, something that made Olivia's pulse quicken whenever he entered a room. "I don't know," she admitted honestly. "Part of me thinks we're just trauma-bonded after everything with Richard and Emily." Alexander stepped closer. "And the other part?" "Is afraid," Olivia whispered, "of being a replacement for Emily, of living in her shadow." "You've never been in her shadow," Alexander said firmly. "You're nothing like her. That's what—" He stopped, then continued more softly. "That's what I find myself thinking about, how different you are, how much I've come to—" "Don't," Olivia interrupted, emotions threatening to overwhelm her. "We shouldn't make decisions based on gratitude or proximity or shared trauma." Alexander reached for her hand, his touch gentle but insistent. "What if it's none of those things? What if it's simpler than that?" "Nothing about us has ever been simple. Maybe it could be." Alexander's eyes searched hers. "I don't want you to leave, Olivia. Not because of our arrangement or Emily's memory, but because when I think about tomorrow without you there, I can't stand it." The confession hung in the air between them. Olivia felt tears prick at her eyes. "I don't want to go," she admitted softly, "but I need to, at least for a while. To figure out who I am outside of all this, outside of Emily's story." Alexander nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes. "And then?" "And then," Olivia said, a small smile forming, "maybe we can see what happens when two people choose each other. No contracts, no obligations, just choice." He smiled back, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "I'll wait." As the movers called that they were finished, Alexander picked up her last bag and walked her downstairs. At the door, he paused. "We're not running from the past," he said softly. "We're building something new, together, when you're ready." Olivia stepped forward impulsively, brushing her lips against his in a gentle kiss. Their first that wasn't for show. Their first that was entirely real. "I'll be back," she promised. "This isn't the end." Sunset painted the coastline in amber and gold as Olivia walked barefoot along the beach. 1 year had passed since she'd left the Hayes mansion, a year of rediscovery and healing. The modest beach house ahead, nestled among cypress trees, looked nothing like the imposing estate where her journey had begun. She paused to watch Alexander on the deck, his attention focused on the laptop where he managed what remained of the Hayes Group. He'd transformed the company, shedding its corrupt divisions and rebuilding around ethical investment and philanthropy. The business press had dubbed it Hayes 2.0, smaller but respectable, dedicated to repairing the damage Richard had caused. Alexander looked up, spotting her on the beach. His smile, warm and genuine, still made her heart skip. Some things hadn't changed, even after everything else had. "Productive walk?" he called as she climbed the steps to the deck. "Very." Olivia settled into the chair beside him. "I've decided to accept the foundation position. Running Emily's charitable trust." Alexander closed his laptop. "That's perfect." The Emily Turner Memorial Foundation had been Olivia's idea, a way to transform her sister's legacy from scandal to something meaningful. Using a portion of the recovered funds from Richard's offshore accounts, the foundation supported whistleblowers exposing corporate fraud. "It feels right," Olivia said. Using Hayes' money to prevent what happened to Emily from happening to others, Alexander reached for her hand, his touch now familiar and comforting. "She would be proud of you." The mention of Emily no longer brought pain, just a bittersweet remembrance. They had both learned to honor her memory without being haunted by it. "How was your meeting with the board?" Olivia asked. "Contentious," Alexander grimaced. "Some still blame me for betraying my father. Others want to distance themselves completely from the Hayes name. And you split the difference?" "As always," he smiled wryly. "The company keeps the name but operates with complete transparency. No secrets, no shadow accounts." Their path to this peaceful moment hadn't been easy. Richard's trial had dominated headlines for months. He'd been sentenced to 20 years for financial crimes and conspiracy to commit murder. The evidence from Emily's journal and the security footage had been damning. Olivia had kept her promise to herself. She'd moved into her mother's home, found a counseling group for grief, and spent 6 months rebuilding her identity separate from the Hayes drama. Alexander had given her space while making his intentions clear through weekly letters and occasional visits. When she'd finally been ready, they'd started fresh, dating properly, building something real from the ashes of their arranged marriage. "I ran into Victoria Winters today," Olivia mentioned, "at the foundation office." Richard's old ally. Alexander raised an eyebrow. That must have been uncomfortable. Surprisingly not. She's trying to rehabilitate her image now that Richard's conviction is public, offered to make a substantial donation. "Money laundering of a different sort," Alexander observed dryly. Olivia laughed. "Probably, but I'll take it. The foundation needs funds to expand." They fell into comfortable silence, watching the sun sink toward the horizon. So different from their early days of suspicion and forced proximity, now their quiet moments felt earned, chosen. "I've been thinking," Alexander said eventually, his tone casual, yet somehow weighted. "Our lease here ends next month." Olivia acknowledged. "Should we renew?" "Actually," Alexander reached into his pocket, suddenly looking nervous. "I had something else in mind." He placed a small velvet box on the table between them. Olivia's breath caught. "Before you say anything," he continued quickly, "this isn't about our past or Emily or the Hayes legacy. It's just about us, the US we chose to become." Olivia opened the box with trembling fingers. The ring inside was nothing like what she'd imagine a Hayes would select. No ostentatious diamond, just a simple band with a small emerald, elegant and understated. "I remembered you saying once that you loved your grandmother's emerald ring," Alexander explained, "that it was sold to pay for Emily's college tuition." Tears pricked at Olivia's eyes. "You remembered that?" "I remember everything about you." His voice was soft, the way you take your coffee. "How you always check the locks twice before bed. The little humming sound you make when you're reading something interesting." Olivia slipped the ring from its box, turning it in the fading light. "It's beautiful. Like our first marriage. I've already prepared the paperwork," Alexander joked, then grew serious. "Unlike our first marriage, this one would be entirely your choice." Olivia thought about her journey. From Emily's grieving sister to Richard's pawn, to a woman who had reclaimed her own narrative. There had been times when she'd wondered if her feelings for Alexander were real or just a product of their extraordinary circumstances. The year apart had answered that question. "No prenuptial agreement this time?" she teased gently. "No agreements at all, except the ones we make together." Alexander took her hand. "Olivia Turner, would you marry me, for real this time?" She slid the ring onto her finger where it fit perfectly. "Yes." Her voice was clear and certain. "Not because I have to, not because of Emily, not because of any Hayes obligation, just because I love you." Alexander pulled her into his arms, his kiss saying everything words couldn't. When they finally separated, Olivia rested her head against his shoulder, watching the last rays of sunlight disappear into the ocean. "Emily once told me that real love doesn't need to be dramatic to be profound," she murmured. "I didn't understand what she meant until now." "And what does it mean?" Alexander asked, his arms tightening around her. Olivia smiled. "That sometimes the most extraordinary love is the one that simply chooses to exist, day after day, without fanfare or obligation. Just choice." As stars began appearing in the darkening sky, they remained together on the deck, no longer bound by the past, but embracing a future they had chosen for themselves. Dear readers, if you were as captivated as I was by Olivia and Alexander's story, this journey of discovery, betrayal, and a love that chose to exist despite all obstacles, leave your comments sharing what touched you the most. Their transformation from a forced marriage to a genuine choice shows how sometimes love appears in the most unexpected places. Like this video and share it with friends who appreciate stories of emotional rebirth and second chances. And you who watched until the end, which country are you watching this video from? I'm curious to know where our viewers who are passionate about romances with mystery and redemption come from. If you enjoyed this story and want more content like this, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We've prepared many other exciting narratives that will make your heart beat faster.